We'll just start.
Well, it's pretty common knowledge that certain foods are healthy and others aren't so much. It's pretty rare that you ever get an explanation as to why. And one thing that bothers me quite a bit is when someone says to eat something because it's good for you or it's a superfood. And almost universally, what that really translates to is it grows in nature. Ironically, half the time it only grows in nature because we've selectively bred it over thousands of years to be that way. And when half of our leading sources of nutrition advice are Pinterest recipes, a lot of what we consider common knowledge is actually completely made up. As
That's
an
true.
example, one of the most common terms you'll see online with regards to healthy food is that something gets rid of toxins in your body, which really doesn't make any sense. If your body is filled with toxins and certain foods remove them, then that means we could have brought back Steve Irwin with a blueberry smoothie. In reality, almost all supplements or foods that get rid of toxins are really just laxatives or diuretics, so it makes you feel like they're somehow flushing something away, when in reality, you could have just put 3 shots of vodka in your latte like a regular person.
I think vodka in a coffee drink would be a bold choice. Even whiskey would make a bit more sense because that's an already established drink in Irish coffee. Not that I put alcohol in my coffee. But back to the banana picture, I've always wanted to try one of those blue bananas. I'm not sure what its official name is right now. I don't want to guess. I'm going to put the correct name here, but I read that they taste like ice cream. So if you've ever tried it, please confirm or deny that. I really want to know.
The next thing you'll often run into are online recipes for anything made overnight in a mason jar telling you you're not getting enough antioxidants. And one of the ways you can
Chia
tell if you're
pudding.
not getting enough antioxidants is by looking at your skin and seeing if it's starting to rust. And while they do play a role in your body, the problem with suggesting that you should consume more is that it's fundamentally like saying the more oil you have in your car, the less likely it is to break down, which is not true because too much actually makes things worse. The good news is that you do have too much oil in your car, you can add the excess to your overnight oats because motor oil is also high in antioxidants. Another common idea that's recently started to shift is that you should never skip breakfast, which there is absolutely no scientific basis for except that breakfast food is my favorite. I think the funny thing is that when I used to tell people I skipped breakfast, they thought I was crazy, but now I can say I'm doing intermittent fasting, and they're like, oh, very disciplined. When in reality, I just woke up at noon.
Isn't it that the breakfast is the most important meal of the day slogan is attributed to Kellogg's marketing for their cornflake product? Or at least that's what I learned in a marketing class. I'm going to have to read up on that again to make sure that that's correct. But it turned out that years after Kellogg's already established that, a nutritionist came to the same findings, but her study is so controversial and disputed to this day, or at least to 2 years ago whenever I read that. Like I said, I'll make sure and I'll add whatever articles I find down below. Eating properly is important, but I'm with Casually Explained. As far as I know, breakfast being the most important meal of the day, there's no true scientific evidence for.
Relatedly, the next thing that's often incredibly misunderstood is diet, especially with things like paleo, keto, intermittent fasting, and varying degrees of vegetarianism becoming so popular. We've all heard limitless jokes about how do you know if someone is a vegan? Because they'll tell you, ha ha ha, classic comedy. But that's not even the case anymore. I see way more people on low carb ketogenic diets post things on the internet like, look at this fool I saw today eating an apple like an absolute normie as they show off their
I find that CrossFit people like to tell you that they do CrossFit as well. So maybe CrossFit is the new vegan.
Costco hollow pork rinds and butter. The most important thing to know is that generally speaking, weight is regulated by calorie intake, so you have a certain amount of calories you burn in a day, and if you repeatedly intake more than that, you'll gain weight, and if you intake less than that, you'll lose weight. As a quick disclaimer, the exact amount of calories absorbed from food isn't always 100%, which is why some people claim calories in, calories out isn't true, but being more exact, calories metabolized and absorbed minus calories burned always is true. Now, for the average person, the amount of calories burned is around 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. Then the generally accepted rule is that there is 3,500 calories in a pound of body fat. So say you wanted to get thick because it's 2019, you would have to eat roughly 500 calories above your daily maintenance for 71 days to gain 10 pounds. Then if we look at the composition of
Oh.
food itself, all food is made up of 3 primary macronutrients that serve a different bodily function, and each has a different caloric value. We have fat, which has 9 calories per gram, protein, which has 4 calories per gram, and carbohydrates, which have 4 calories per gram as well. And then there's a fourth bonus macronutrient, alcohol, which has 7 calories per gram. As for their physiological roles, loosely speaking, fat regulates hormones and stops your cells from imploding. Protein is for bodily function and muscular regeneration. Carbohydrates are primarily for aerobic and anaerobic activity. And then alcohol, which sadly just poisons you. The good news is that because too much alcohol is toxic, if your friend is passed out in the club bathroom, you can flush out the alcohol by popping a blueberry under their tongue, just like a sensu bean. Below that, we have fiber and micronutrients, which are all your vitamins and minerals.
He's
Just
funny
make
today.
sure you get enough of these or your teeth will fall out. Now, with these fundamentals in mind, if we start to take a look at all the popular and successful diets out there nowadays, the fact of the matter is that almost all of them have good points, but they also all have bad points. Meaning that you're not an enlightened member of the nutritional Illuminati just because you stopped eating bread. And if we take a look at all the most common diets that cover the full spectrum of plant-based to animal-based, we can see they all have pros and cons. Veganism is sustainable and very nice to the animals, but it's a bit harder to get the right macronutrients, and you constantly have to wonder if your friends don't want you for dinner because of your dietary restrictions or just your personality. Vegetarianism is sustainable and nice to the animals, but limited food choices. Paleo diets are good for weight loss, but again, limited food choice. Ketogenic diets, very good for weight loss because it massively
limited.
regulates blood sugar, which affects cravings and appetite, but it's extremely limiting in terms of food choice. Not very good for anyone doing anaerobic sports because there are no available carbohydrates, but it's actually not bad if you run ultra marathons. So next time you go for a 100-mile run, make sure to bring your pepperoni holster. Carnivorous diets, these ones are a bit weird and they're very unsustainable, but very good for weight loss and autoimmune disorders / arthritis / certain types of depression. And while there have been some pretty miraculous anecdotes, the downside is that it has not been well studied long term, and everyone at the restaurant will think you're a serial killer as you peel the breading off your KFC family bucket. For some reason, the community is also really involved with cryptocurrency, so if anyone was actually the nutritional Illuminati, this would be it. And then finally, the classic,
I do none of these diets. I'm not on any diet.
if it fits your macros, which means eating whatever you want as long as it fits within a designated calorie limit and matches the amount of protein, fat, and carbohydrates you've allotted. This is common for athletes and people who want to be bodybuilders, but in the 7 years they've been going to the gym, they've only made 2 years worth of progress. Speaking of the gym, there are also a few misconceptions when it comes to exercise, and one of the most common jokes you hear in weightlifting communities is making fun of people who say, "I'm just looking to tone." Because the only two variables to your physical appearance is the volume of muscle you have and the volume of fat you have. It's also incredibly difficult to gain muscle. So you'll often hear girls and even guys say, I'm worried that if I start lifting weights, I'll get too big. And unfortunately,
Often.
the thing is, no matter how much you believe you're an anime protagonist, it just isn't going to happen. Ultimately, there are two main ways of improving your physical health through exercise, which are strength training and cardiovascular training. In other words, how strong is your bod and how strong is your heart and lungs. And while even 30 minutes to an hour of walking a day is enough to make sure everything keeps working, further training at the gym is not only a good idea, it's a lifestyle where you can lift a heavy thing now so you can be in pain for a while and then lift a slightly heavier thing later, or ski on the elliptical until exhaustion so that once your heart eventually recovers, you'll have more love to give.
Okay. That was actually the most informative, casually explained video that I've seen. Thank you for sending this in. And the channel is called Casually Explained. This guy just explains a variety of topics casually. I'll link it in the description for you. If you have any more suggestions from this channel, let me know. And as I said, I don't diet, so I have no real input to give there. I do exercise daily, but less for aesthetics and more because it has such a positive impact on my mood and general productivity. So yeah, not trying to make gains, But I don't skip leg day or any of the other gym things people say. Watching this whole thing actually let me know that I could stand to learn a lot more about nutrition because it's a subject that I don't look into, read about, anything of the sort. So if you have a book that you want to recommend to the channel on anything touching on this subject, please feel free to do so. But I don't have a literary recommendation for you today. I will try to drop 2 books in the next video. Other than that, just leave your thoughts on any of this. If you tried that blue banana, let me know, please. And that's all from me. So thanks for watching with me.